The purpose of this webinar was really to talk about some of what we hear out there at different conferences and trade shows about some of the myths and truths regarding GIS planning, about data, embedding, and different components of the website and putting tools into your website. So hopefully we give you that little something new today that you didn't know before. And without further ado, let's jump into it. So we're going to go right into the meaty stuff right here in the beginning and talk about data vendors. The who, the what, the why. We hear a lot of different data vendors that are out there: Applied Geographic Solutions, Info USA, ESRI, and EMSI, or Esri and MZ, are probably the 4 top ones that we in our industry hear. And so I thought we'd kind of point out a little bit about the different vendors. For Applied Geographic Solutions, they provide demographic information, labor force, and consumer expenditure information. They project current year and 5 years, and they can go up to 10 years. We update that data 2 times annually, so Applied Geographic Solutions updates that data twice a year, and the data is available at the block group level. I have this one in yellow because this is one of the GIS planning vendors that we use for our demographics, labor force, and consumer expenditure information. Info USA, otherwise known as Info Group, is another vendor that GIS planning uses for our business data. So this information is actually, and interestingly enough, Info Group is also the vendor for ESRI. They use Info Group for their business data as well. Because we at GIS Planning have a direct relationship and a very strong relationship with Info Group, we have a lot of flexibility, more flexibility than maybe some of the other economic development vendors in how to use this data in other formats, which allows different tool functionalities like pinpoint tool, which allows essentially the user to pinpoint on the map and get data from any pinpoint, so you do not have to have a site or building identified. 6-digit NAICS code searches, cluster search analysis. So the information, the business information at Info Group will really get you down into that really kind of the weeds of those 6-digit NAICS codes on what your business is, both locally and those who are looking to expand or relocate want to know. Estimated annual sales, estimated number of employees, a website if available. So it's very useful and important data in what we do for economic development. ESRI is also a big name in the industry. Many of you have heard them. I think people refer to it as ESRI or Esri. They as well provide demographic, consumer expenditure, and labor force information. They do current and 5-year projections. They update this 1 time a year, and data is available at the block group level. The difference between Applied Geographic Solution and ESRI is probably a little bit of their methodology. Their numbers may be different by a very, very few, very, very minimal, but it's nothing that would be alarming or that anybody would skew a decision because it's so minimal. Actually, ESRI used to use Applied Geographic Solutions before they actually ended up becoming their own data provider for data. They're kind of the big name in the industry, we understand that, but it's like Google versus Chrome. You're both going to get to the same place and the same information. It's just a matter of which one you use. GIS Planning, again, uses Applied Geographic Solutions and Info USA, Info Group. EMSI or MZ information is occupational information, and that's pretty much what they do. So if you have Applied Geographic data or ESRI data, that's really kind of all that's needed with that. You don't, although some people really do prefer to use the MZ data, and we can always integrate that into our tools as well. So alphabet soup, we understand there's a lot of acronyms floating around. So just to kind of clarify a little bit on both ESRI and AGS, both of their data is off of the US Census. They use monthly counts from the United States Postal Service. They also use that ZIP+4 postal carrier route information to make sure the information and the counts are as accurate as possible. So while not all methodologies between the two are the same, data may vary, again, very minimal for both. And then I mentioned ESRI using Infogroup as their business data. So let's talk a little bit more about data before we get into some of the other myths and legends. For your, the economic developers that are on the call, some of the data that you really, really must have on your website includes demographic information, labor force, consumer and retail, business and industry. Talent information is very important. Talent information can provide your website visitor with where your graduates are coming from, what field of study they're studying, which degree is coming out of that learning institution, and then map those institutions so that your businesses will understand that they're close to that labor force. Geographic information systems, otherwise known as GIS, allows a user to not only find available sites and buildings, but also find information like where are your floodplains or your wetlands, where are your opportunity zones. They're different map layers that actually provide visual information, so your users understanding some of the both advantages and maybe concerns around a particular property. Current. We cannot stress this enough. Current data is a must. If you're going to have any data on your website and it's not current, you might as well just take it off, because you've already lost credibility by providing old static information. Your website visitor is going to have to go out and search for that data in another source. So definitely be the resource of current data for your community or communities. And beware of the PDF pitfall. A lot of data right now, it's always great to be able to export. It's nice to be able to export in a variety of ways, but you really want to be careful and not have data be so static that it's just a PDF and they're having to export that whole PDF to whoever it is that they're talking to, when maybe they only need little snippets or they're looking for very specific information. So and then there's no excuse for boring data. How many of you, I know we can't really hear what's going on right now with your answers, but you see a chart like this of some of the data information, and I mean, would you rather look at this, or would you rather look at something like this? There's so many different ways to take data and make data more interesting, and I know for me a picture says 1,000 words, and so if I'm looking at a population number and I'm able to see that we've got 8.4 million people, it really sure helps me to be able to figure out in a really quick visual snapshot what the breakdown of this population number would be. So we talked about making sure it can be easily exported and shared. There are a variety of formats. Make sure that your data can be exported and shared. Not just PDF, Excel and Word documents are great because we can include those in different reports. A link is wonderful. Test the link if you're using that link, because you want to include that maybe in a newsletter or a social media post or an email, and you want to make sure that link gets that user to where they want to go. So you can just make sure you have a bunch of different options for your user depending upon what they're looking for that data to use for. So another big question that we hear is to embed the website or the GIS tool and data tools, or not to embed, and what does that mean? So let's kind of break that down so you feel like you walk away with really a good clarity on what embedding means. So what does it mean to embed tools on your website? The main difference between linking a site and embedding is where you're placing the site. Both ultimately point to the external website browser. However, an embedded website places this inside of your existing website. So it appears to the end user that you're in one single site, and they really are, because they're not being linked out. A link will take the user out to a different location, and many times today you don't even know you're being taken to a different location. Either option allows us as a vendor to manage the data and the service externally with no maintenance needed by you, and we don't need to take the site down to do whatever we need to do, any updates or any pushing out any improvements or new tools to it. We automatically push that through. The information is still housed on our server, even if it's embedded in your site or even if it's a link. So a lot of communities get really kind of, oh, we want to make sure that this is embedded, but they really don't understand why. So number 2 here is, what is the difference? If a website tool is embedded and your website goes down, the tools are no longer accessible. So if your server is slow, your tool will also operate slowly. Embedded sites don't fill the screen with the map data, and you will have blank real estate on the sides of the map tools that are harder to read. Alissa, do you want to comment on any of that?
Yeah, I think it's really the things that you're talking about are very important. I mean, it is true that if you are embedding, you've got a smaller tool and you're minimizing the amount of, I guess, real estate on the page that people can occupy when they're doing their analysis. Whereas if you host it on a microsite, which the end user is not aware of, all they see is the tool is slightly bigger and easier to manage. But we also try to be sensitive to the fact that our clients sometimes have their own reasons for needing to embed. So maybe, for example, they are not allowed, they have budgetary restrictions on creating any new websites that budget year. Or maybe there's a policy, they're not allowed to have a separate page, even though it's just a separate domain. Sometimes that is an issue, and we try to be sensitive to that. So we will do everything that we can to work with the clients depending on what the restrictions are. But you are quite right that that when it comes to embedding or not, really we do tend to say that clients should consider not embedding or using a microsite.
Absolutely, thank you. So what does GIS planning offer? So we offer both. You can embed or you can link. Should you choose to link, we'll even license the URL for you. When you do this, and should you have this option, be creative with what you select. So some examples could be choosevallejo.com, gemstateprospector.com. I mean, I was a client 19 years ago and I had southwestsitefinder.com. So it's really great to be able to include not only the location of where you are, but what they're going to find when they get there. So that's just a little bit of information on linking. So does it make any difference to the user? I'm going to answer this with both yes and no. Most don't know that they've been linked and outside, and so that is not going to make any difference. The speed of your website is going to affect, of course, their experience. So if it's linked, they'll have likely a faster connection. And of course, the size of the map, that's going to give them a different experience. If you haven't taken a full advantage of the full screen, it sometimes is harder to read and harder to see, which is what we are alluding to with what's the difference in question number 2. So that's the only real reason that their user experience would be affected. And then finally on this is, what else should you know? If you're linking your site, it's really kind of a summary. Be unique when choosing a URL. And this can help drive traffic to your site. And honestly, from a marketing perspective, Alissa, you could as well comment on this, that the creative URL is always a great marketing tool in and of itself. So it's really something fun that you or your community can get behind when you've got, something like a Gem State Prospector. You're advertising your state, you're advertising your location, you're advertising what they're going to find when they get there. That's just a couple of the thoughts that I have. It's interesting that some of the linked sites typically get higher traffic than the embedded sites, and we do think that has something to do with the creativity of the name. But Alissa, do you have any thoughts on that?
Yeah, absolutely. And this is actually something that we will work with our clients to help them come up with the name that works best for them. And so there's all sorts of ways to do that. We take into account organic search terms, what are people searching in that area, what makes sense to the average user, and also what is going to get them the most traffic. And how will it fit in with their existing URL? So, you might choose something like Abbotsford Site Finder or Business Navigator, or, there's all sorts of ways to do that. But we do tend to suggest that it be an easy to remember URL, that it use the kinds of words that people are likely to search, and that it fit in with your overall branding, and not use something like GIS, for example, because most people are not GIS people and they might think that that link doesn't have anything to do with them.
Very good. Thank you. So let's kind of move ahead to kind of, I love this visual because it really does, again, picture says 1,000 words. Make your data and your links easy to find. Whether you embed the data or you link that data, make sure that the information is easy to find for their user. More than 2 clicks and you've lost me. If I really have to search for it, and believe me, we have spent, we spend all day, every day searching for information. And if it's buried in your website and not easily labeled and found, you've already lost your user. So analytics, let's kind of talk a little bit about analytics. We at GIS Planning offer 3 sets of analytics. And so I kind of have a little bit of what these 3 analytic sets provide. Google Analytics, we hear a lot of that. Time of visit, duration of visit, number of visitors, that's all very important. Average load time, that's important, so you know if it's really kind of a slow responding site. Enter and exit pages are really important. And I've never really thought about it until kind of researching some of this and the analytic points, that the exit pages, if you find that consistently you are losing people on the same page repeatedly, that may be time to beef up that page, to do something different on that page. Really, because I mean, they all have to leave somewhere, I understand, but really kind of pay attention to the quality of the information on your site. GIS Planning offers Zoom Prospector Analytics, which is a second analytics set that we provide, which provides you not only the type of property searched, for instance, was it office or medical, but the size range of properties that were searched, and then the top communities. If you're a multi-regional community and you've got several areas within your geography, you're going to see the top 5 top search cities within that geography or counties. So that provides you an additional layer of really useful information. And then finally, you hear a lot about lead gen ID or lead forensics. And so this is another tool that we've provided for our clients that actually provides you the name of the company, phone number, website, and address, the search ranges for each visit. So example, if they're looking for Class A office space, you're going to be able to find that between 3,000 and 5,000 square feet. You're going to be able to see that, and the actual properties or actual reports that that company viewed. So you're not going to be able to see that Stevie from GIS Planning or Alissa from GIS Planning was on your website and looked at XYZ, but you will see that GIS Planning was on your website. They did a search for 3,000 to 5,000 square feet of Class A office space, and which properties that we looked at or which reports we looked at for every visit. So these 3 together really do complete that whole analytics puzzle on for you on what your website is doing, how is it performing, how are they finding you, and what are they doing when they get there. And then finally, who's doing what when they get there. That's the big, I wish I had that when I was in economic development years ago. So GIS who? Many of you, hopefully we've met you before, and we've got, many friends in the industry, both as clients and then, of course, in our economic development lives prior. But we hear a lot about other GIS vendors. The one more specifically that we hear about lately is GIS Web Tech. So we have GIS Planning and GIS Web Tech, and people get us confused. So I wanted to kind of put a slide together that really showed some of the differences. GIS Planning was established in 1998, so this is our 20th anniversary. We're very proud of that. I've been a client and worked on their sales team and been a friend of this company for 19 of those 20 years. So that's really exciting. Former clients are now our team. So not only myself, but Russ Riblet, our director of sales, and Jeff Sennison, our client services director, also were clients of GIS Planning. All of our programming and development is done in-house. And we were acquired by the Financial Times in January 2017. So we now have even larger research and larger resources at our fingertips, but it has not affected that small company feel. And we have a team of about 18. That changes a little bit here and there, just maybe a team of 17, maybe a team of 20, depending upon the programmers and developers that we bring. But again, they're all in-house in our San Francisco office. GIS Web Tech, they became forward-facing in fall of 2016. So I think they had established themselves as a company prior, but they hadn't actually kind of gone to market yet, so to speak. So they became an actual company in 2016. According to LinkedIn and all the research that I've done, they have about 8 employees. It's gone. And some of the information was 7, some was 8, so I went with 8. They only use ESRI data, and I don't know about their programming and development being done in-house. I know 2 of their employees are sales, and one of those being the president of the company, and so a team of 8 would make the development and programming tough, but I don't know either way. So that's just a little bit of the facts. And then, but what are the differences in the tools? And we really kind of listed some of the new kind of cool things that are out there. First of all, the pinpoint search, we highlighted on that earlier. That's the ability to set a pin on any location and get the data from that one pinpoint without having a site or building identified. Being able to share properties by emails or links, detailed business data, which is that 6-digit NAICS code data search where it tells you the number of employees and estimated sales. Customizable folders. So we're launching a new platform for our GIS tool, and it has the ability to customize folders for each project. So if you have Project Green or Project Yellow, you can actually assign different properties into those folders and email that folder to an end user. We also have community search by characteristics. So if I was looking into the state of Florida and I wasn't sure what kind of community I was looking for or the name of the community I was looking for, I could search by population, income, airports, labor force, etc. Customizable microsites, interactive reports, which means it's kind of live, on the fly, very responsive. GIS planning provides all of that, as well as interactive talent data. We talked about talent data earlier. A back-end system that can be customized by a client. So it provides you, and I apologize for the background information, I'm in the executive floor of a hotel, and a whole bunch of people decided to come in. So the background system that can be customized by the client. So it actually has that background, the back of the system that can be used so that your team knows what fields to populate, how to maneuver your little pinpoint if you're talking about available land. It's personalized and customized for you. We provide 3 levels of your analytics, data reports that can be embedded anywhere in your website outside of your GIS tool, dynamic data analysis, which is sorting from radius or free draw, and I'll show you a picture of that in a moment, and contacting your broker and client services response time, which is so important. I did put unknown here because we can't be certain their response time, but I asked our client services director 90% of the time, what is your response time to fix an issue? And he said less than an hour. Now I put 2 because I gave him an hour to open the email and to kind of, contact the client, but less than an hour for 90% of our service requests. And that number is probably much higher in terms of 90%, but I asked him that specific question. So we are very proud of our response time. So where are we with what's new in economic development? Let me reread this. We are what's new in economic development. That makes kind of a big difference. Sorry about that, Lisa. So we mentioned the platform that we've recently updated, and so it's a whole new look. You can see we have our freehand draw tool that we mentioned. It's very much kind of that Zillow, kind of property finder tool that seems to be real popular, where you show the properties. Again, we've got the ability to search by location, properties, size, sales, lease, various attributes that are all customized. But we've added different tools like the freehand draw tool and the ability to create multiple folders for saving. And 3D is very important because we've heard the rumor that GIS planning doesn't have 3D, and we do have 3D. So it's already active and in our sites right now. So I put a little arrow. If you see at the bottom of the page on the left-hand side, there's the little Google symbol. Above that is that little box with those little 4 little buttons in it. That is your ability to turn on the 3D imagery. So we definitely have the 3D.
I just want to jump in and say, Stevie, that the 3D imagery is available particularly in large metropolitan areas. It really depends to some degree on the depth of data, of imagery that Google Maps has for your region. So for example, if you're in a relatively rural area or a smaller community, it is possible that Google Maps, Google Earth does not have 3D capability there yet. I'm sure they're working on it, and I'm sure they're intending to do it. I think, Stevie, you may have shared your webcam there by accident, just to give you a heads up. But that, yes, for metro areas, look for the little dots there, and if you zoom in, sometimes you'll see them. Sometimes they don't appear right away until you zoom in.
Thank you. Hopefully the webcam is off. I've got a sticker over it just in case something like that happened ever in my future. Okay, so we touched on this, but it's really worth the celebratory note. 20 years of experience. I mean, when you start thinking about where were you 20 years ago, I was much younger, I'm afraid then, and I was just starting my career in economic development. And for those of you who know us and our family, you can see Pablo and Anatalio here, and they just look just total young and just like they're out exploring. And so 20 years is no small feat for any company, especially these days. And so I'm very proud of GIS planning to hit this milestone. So we want your suggestions, and your opinion matters. I would say, there is a good chunk of some of our tools that come from client suggestions, whether it be a conversation with a client that we're having at a conference or a trade show. We get those client suggestions, and if they're suggestions that we feel that are going to benefit a majority of our clients, that's definitely added to the list. Some of those include property expiration dates. We've got on the new platform, we've got the ability to scroll in and out with the mouse wheel, and so there are really cool tools that have all come from just the ideas of clients with, hey, have you thought of, or this would make my experience easier. So keep those ideas coming if you get any ideas. And with that, I'm just going to close and say thank you so much. Alissa, thank you so much for your additional thoughts and comments on some of these tools. Alissa's our marketing master, and so she really understands marketing, social media, search engine optimization. She works with our clients to get our clients off and rolling on a really strong start and make a really big deal of their site. She keeps us on our toes and keeps webinars like this going, and we don't know what we'd do without her. And then I work in sales, so if you have any questions on the sales side or would like a private demo with you and your team, or have any additional questions, you're able to email me. You can always ask Alissa as well, and I'm sure it'll get to me. So this is our contact information.
And I just wanted to remind everyone that there is a questions field on the GoToWebinar control panel on the right-hand side of your screen. We do have a couple of questions that have come in. One is, besides AGS and Infogroup, what other data resources does GIS planning use? Stevie, why don't you take a crack at that?
Sure. We offer information from the education, the Bureau, I want to say the Bureau of Education, that's where our talent data comes from. We have the wage and salary is by the Bureau of Labor Statistics, and then we've got the Info Group or Info USA and Applied Geographic Solutions. We have some housing information, and that was brought to you by Zillow, but I think on the new platform that that housing snapshot is no longer included. So.
Yeah, and also to remind people that we can, of course, build in your data. We do not charge to do that. If you have local layers, we're always happy to include that. We don't want to list every manhole cover that you've got in town. I don't think that would help you, but we're certainly happy to take the GIS data that you have. And we often use data such as wetlands and floodplains layers and other kinds of data. Energy is another example, education, transportation data that comes from a variety of different sources. that we have built into the tool over the years, and we're always on the lookout for new ones. So if that's something that is of interest to you, then please feel free to reach out to us there as well. And we have another question also about whether there's any advantage in terms of using website analytics if you embed or use a microsite. Is there any difference?
No, you still get the same quality demographic or analytic information. The analytics will work for any GIS planning, at least the analytics that we provide will work for any GIS planning provided tool or feature. So if whether it's the intelligence components or it's the GIS tool, it will provide you with not only the name of the company and the time of visit and the enter and exit pages, but again, what that company is doing on your website, the links that they've clicked on. If you have other pages in your website, that's where I believe our analytics will stop. However, if you're looking for lead gen ID for your entire site, that can be negotiated with you and for you. So if that's something you're interested in, you can do that. And your Google Analytics will pick all of that up as well.
Excellent. Yeah, absolutely. So there's no reason to discern between those. I think, Stevie, that takes us to the end of our questions today, and I'm aware that we are slightly past the half hour. We do invite people to reach out to us. You have our contact information up there on the screen. If you want to chat with us or ask any other questions, please send them our way. We're very happy to take a look at what your questions are. And Stevie, thank you so much for this wonderful presentation, and thank you all for taking time out of your busy days. We value your participation and your involvement, and keep an eye out for other upcoming webinars. Thanks, Stevie.
Thank you so much. It was a fun webinar to do. Thank you, everyone.
Thanks. Good afternoon or morning. Have a great day. Bye-bye.